Timeline of the Warhammer 40,000 Universe Part 3. The Great Awakening, 41st Millennium. In the late 41st millennium, the dormant Necrons have finally awoken from their long sleep to begin their conquest of the galaxy once more. In many cases, the Tomb Worlds had been resettled by the unsuspecting humans of the Imperium, leading to horrific scenes of devastation as the newly awakened Necrons cleansed whole planets of their populations of fragile human souls. The reason for the Necrons awakening from their long sleep in the late 41st millennium is debated amongst the Magi of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Possible catalysts include the Tyranid Hive mine's shadow in the warp, or an Adeptus Mechanicus Explorator fleet that disturbed one of the Tomb Worlds. There were major contact between the Imperium and the Necrons came in 963rd year of the 41st millennium. During the conflict between the Ultramarines Chapter and the Tau over control of what turned out to be the Tomb World of Malbede. In that instance, the Ultramarines Chapter Master Marneus Calgar ordered the use of an Exterminatus against Malbede after allowing the Tau forces to get off-planet to eliminate the much greater Necron threat. But Necrons soon began awakening on the Tomb Worlds all across the galaxy after this event. Regardless of the reason for their awakening, the Necrons proceeded to reap havoc amongst all the peoples of the galaxy. None can say for sure how many Tomb Worlds entered the Great Sleep some 60 million standard years ago, but it is certain that a great many did not survive into the late 41st millennium. Technologically advanced through the Necrons were to attempt a stasis sleep of such scale was a great risk, even for them. For 60 million Terran years the Necrons slept, voicelessly waiting for the chance to complete the Silent King's final order, to restore the Necron dynasties to the former glory. As the centuries passed, ever more Tomb Worlds fell prey to malfunction or ill fortune. For many, the results were minor, such as a disruption to the operation of the Tomb World's chronostat or revivification chambers, causing the inhabitants to awaken later than intended, but some of the Tomb Worlds suffered more calamitous events. Cascade failures of stasis crypts destroyed millions, if not billions, of dormant Necrons. Some Tomb Worlds were destroyed by the retribution of marauding Eldar, their defense systems overmatched by these ancient enemies of the Necrons. Other Tomb Worlds fell victim to the uncaring evolution of the galaxy itself. Tectonically unstable planets crushed Necron strongholds slumbering at their hearts, stars went supernova, consuming orbiting Tomb Worlds in the death throes. And everywhere inquisitive lifeforms scrabbled and fought over the bones of Necron territories, causing more damage in their unthinking search for knowledge than the vengeful Eldar ever could. The Great Awakening has been far from precise, and the Necrons have not arisen as one people but in fitful starts over scattered millennia, like some gestalt sleep arising from a troubled dream. Errors in circuitry and protocols ensured that a revivification destined to take place in the early years of the 41st millennium of the imperial calendar actually began far earlier in a few cases, or has yet to occur at all in others. The very first Tomb Worlds revived to see the great crusade of the Emperor of Mankind sweep across the galaxy in the late 30th millennium. A handful stirred in time to see the Nova Terra Interregnum, when Nova Terra challenged the might of the Golden Throne in the 34th millennium for 900 years, or arose at the hour in which the apostles of the Blind King waged the terrible wars that began in the 550th year of the 37th millennium. Some have still never awoken. Even now, at the close of the 41st millennium, billions of Necrons still slumber in the stasis tombs, silently awaiting the clarion call of destiny. It is rare for a Tomb World to awaken to full function swiftly. With but the slightest flaw in the revivification cycle, the engrammatic pathways of a Necron sleeper scatter and degrade. In most cases, these coalesce over time to restore identity and purpose, but it is a process that can take decades, or even centuries, and cannot be hurried. Sometimes recovery never occurs and the sleeper is doomed forever to a mindless state. There are thousands of tomb worlds scattered throughout the galaxy whose halls are thronged with shambling automatons, Necrons whose minds fled during the long hibernation, and whose bodies have been co-opted by Tomb World's master autonomic program in an attempt to bring some form of order to their existence. Other Necrons refer to such places as the Severed Worlds, and they loathe and fear their inhabitants in equal measure. None of this is to say that even an individual lucky enough to achieve a flawless revivification awakens alert and aware. One of the hidden tyrannies of biotransference was how it entrenched the gulf between the rulers and the ruled. For there were not enough resources to provide all Necrontia with living metal bodies that possessed the density of engrammatic pathways required to retain the full gamut of personality and awareness. Thus, as was ever the case, the very finest necrodermis bodies went to those individuals of the highest rank within Necrontia society, the pharaons and overlords, their cryptex and nemesors. For the professional soldiery, the merely adequate was deemed appropriate. As for the common people, they received that which remained, comparatively crude mechanical bodies that were little more than lobotomized prisons for their minds. Numb to all joy and experience, they are bound solely to the will of the betters, their function meaningless without constant direction. Yet even here a tiny spark of self-awareness remains, enough only to torment the Necron with memories and echoes of the past it once knew. For these tortured creatures, death would be far preferable, but, alas, they no longer have the wit to realize it or the autonomy to search it out. A tomb world is at its most vulnerable during the revivification process. The colossal amounts of energy generated are detectable across great distances and are an irresistible lure to the inquisitive and acquisitive alike. In these early stages, it is unlikely that the army of a tomb world proper will have awoken to full function, so defense lies in the hands of the Necron's robotic servitor constructs, the canoptech spiders, scarabs and wraiths. Initially, these defenders will be directed by the Tomb World's autonomic master program, whose complex algorithmic decision matrix allows it to calculate an efficient response to any perceived threat. As the threat level rises, so too does the intensity of the master program's countermeasures, prioritizing the activation of the Tomb World's automated defenses and the revivification of its armies according to the needs of the situation at hand. If all goes well, the master program's actions will be sufficient to drive out the invader, or at least stall the progress until the first Necron legions have awoken, at which point the master program surrenders command of the facility to the Tomb World's Necron nobility. When a large population center of a younger race of the galaxy has evolved or expanded across the stars close to a tomb world, the encoded programming delves deep into its data archives and armories in order to conduct an aggressive defense. Such tomb worlds are the ones that have expanded the spheres of influence most rapidly, for its rulers have awakened to find the full military might already mobilized and awaiting the commands. Indeed, the speed with which many tomb worlds of the Sotek dynasty have recovered lost territory is chiefly attributable to the ultimately doomed wave of Ulamethi colonies established on the core worlds during the late 39th millennium. To external observers, the behavior of awoken tomb worlds must seem eclectic almost to the point of randomness. Some Necron lords send diplomatic emissaries to other worlds, negotiating for the return of lost territories and technological artifacts, or cast off into the stars, searching for distant tomb worlds not yet awoken. Others focus attention inwards, avoiding unnecessarily conflict with alien races to pursue internal politics or oversee the rebuilding of their planet to the glory of 60 million years past. The vast majority of tomb worlds, however, take a more aggressive tack, launching resource raids, planetary invasions, or the full-blown genocidal purges the Necron's former Cetan masters once called Red Harvests. Yet even here, it is impossible to predict the precise form these deeds will take. Sometimes the Necrons attack in the full spectrum in spectacle of honorable war, rigorously applying their ancient codes of battle. At others, every possible underhanded tactic is employed, from piracy and deception to assassination and subornation. On other occasions, the campaign is less a martial action than systematic extermination, the swatting of lesser life forms as they themselves would swat insects. On other occasions, the campaign is less a martial action than systematic extermination, the swatting of lesser life forms as they themselves would swat insects. All of these acts, diverse though they are in scope and method, are directed towards a single common goal: the restoration of the Necron dynasties to rule over the galaxy. Yet, with the Triarch long gone and huge numbers of tomb worlds lying desolate or still dormant, there can be no galaxy-wide coordination, no grand strategy that will bring about Necron ascendancy. Instead, each tomb world's ruler must fend for himself, pursuing whatever course he deems most suited to the circumstance. For some, this is the domination of nearby threats and the sowing of terror on alien worlds. For others, it might be the recovery of cultural treasures of the lost Necrontier, the stockpiling of raw strategic materials for campaigns yet to come, or even the search for an organic species whose bodies might prove to be suitable vessels for Necron minds. Thus finally ending the curse of biotransference. Indeed, this last matter, the apotheosis from the undying machine back to living being, is the key motivating factor for many Necron nobles and royals, for its possibility weighed heavily on the Silent King's mind at the moment of his final command. All this is further complicated by the fact that the departure of the Silent King and the dissolution of the Necron-Tier Empire's Triarch left no clear succession. As a result, the rulers of many tomb worlds see an opportunity not only to restore the dynasties of old but also to improve the standing within the galaxy-wide Necron political hierarchy. The motives of Necron nobles and royals are often muddied by the pursuit of personal power, making accurate divination of an individual's intentions, and therefore of the campaigns conducted by his undying legions, nigh impossible. Having slumbered in dusty stasis crypts scattered across the galaxy, the Necrons have been slowly awakening, one tomb world at a time, for several millennia. The process is far from stable, however, for the legions have lain immobile and undreaming for 60 million standard years. It is a staggering feat of science that any tomb worlds have survived at all, and many have fallen prey to corruption in their arcane systems, planetary upheaval, and the actions of other species, most of them in ignorance but a few very deliberate indeed. Throughout the long eons of slumber, the tomb world's autonomic systems have worked tirelessly to maintain these vast structures and to defend them against the intrusions of the lesser species of the galaxy. It is not known to the Imperium exactly when the first tomb world initiated its revivification protocols, and it is quite possible that some did so in error well before the ordained time. Only now, as more and more tomb worlds awaken, is a pattern becoming visible to those whose mission it is to stand watch upon the trackless reaches of the galaxy and beyond. Piecing together scattered accounts of skull-faced reaper machines rising from the dust of dead worlds the length and breadth of the galaxy, the Xeno-savants of the Inquisition are faced with a stark realization. What at first appeared to be unrelated alien raids serving no overall purpose were, in fact, the heralds of a disaster of galactic proportions. Having slept so still and for so long, it is not possible for a tomb world to awaken quickly into a fully alert state. While dormant, each is controlled by a master artificial intelligence program that oversees its essential maintenance and defense, mobilizing what resources it judges appropriate to any given situation or threat. As the long-awaited time of awakening nears, as best can be judged by the master program, more of its systems are brought online and more of the intoed revived. Often, it is the lower order of Necrons, the Necron warriors, and immortals, that are awakened in the initial phases. These nearly mindless automatons following their lifeless protocols are brought online first so that the way might be prepared for the more senior members of the dynasty. As each tier in the Necron dynasty's hierarchy is revived, each more intelligent and bearing more individuality than the last, the whole process gradually begins to appear more like the workings of an ancient civilization and less like that of some great machine. At the allotted time, a Necron overlord is awakened, and upon his full revival, the master program cedes power to its creators. For that point onward, a truly ancient mind leads the Tomb World, and what happens next depends entirely upon his character and ambition. Some overlords are cunning and patient, seeking to muster every resource at the disposal before launching the legions into the void to fulfill the destiny of the lost Necron Empire. Others are bellicose and impatient, launching a string of attacks before those other starfaring races settled in the region discover the Tomb World's awakening. While most are likely to assault nearby worlds occupied by sapient races, some have been known to offer such worlds an ultimatum: serve the Necrons, or die. The process of awakening presents a massive danger to a Tomb World. If anything other than small numbers of Necrons are revivified at once, a staggering amount of energy is unleashed, which can be detected within light years and inevitably leads to an investigation by ignorant and curious mortal species. Thus, should a Tomb World awaken to find itself lying near, or even beneath, the territory of a younger species, the massive energy spike might draw such attention that it is overwhelmed before its warriors are able to respond. Having been awakened and control turned over to an overlord, the Tomb World must in time take its place in the domains of the Necron dynasty that created it. While many dynasties have never awakened and, due to a variety of disasters, never will, many are slowly piecing together their former domains. One world at a time, empires that vanished eons ago are being rebuilt, and long-dormant hierarchies are reasserting themselves once more. At the center of each of these risen empires is a crown world, the glorious capital, and the seat of the pharaoh who rules an entire dynasty. Below it are numerous lesser Tomb Worlds and other Necron holdings, though rarely are these anywhere near as extensive as they were in their full glory 60 million years ago. Time of ending: the 750th year of the 41st millennium to the 9998th year of the 41st millennium. As the threats of the Imperium grow, mankind stands on the precipice of utter extinction. The time of ending is the era of humanity's judgment, where faith shall be tested by fire and all men's courage will be pushed to its limits, and well beyond. Secession, rebellion, chaos, corruption, and heresy are now rife within every corner of the Imperium. Sensing weakness, alien empires, ancient and new to humanity's experience, orcs, Eldar, Tau, Necrons, and perhaps worst of all, the Tyranids, close in from every side. Zealots rant that the Xenos are mankind's punishment, his just consequences for straying from the Emperor's guidance. The rise of mutants and witches is yet another sign of humanity's sin. Desperate messages from across the galaxy echo through the warp. Astropaths work feverishly to pull the transmissions from the Imperium and translate them, to sift the meaning from the garble. The messages are increasingly dire. Planetary governors send desperate pleas for aid, Imperial Guard officers call for reinforcements, fleet commanders issue ominous warnings of enemy starship movements. The forces of the Imperium fight with the valor of ancient heroes, defending humanity from within, without and beyond, but they cannot be everywhere at once. The Space Marines and Imperial Guard are at war as never before, even during the Horus Heresy, defending humanity from threats within, without and beyond the boundaries of reality. The Space Marines and Imperial Guard are at war as never before, even during the Horus Heresy, defending humanity from threats within, without and beyond the boundaries of reality. The news grows worse daily, the attacks on the Imperium steadily increasing. Most ominous of all, the prescient foretell of great ripples in the warp, like a swell in the water disturbed by some colossal but unseen menace in the depths below. Fell things are gathering that dread realm, straining as never before to break the bounds of reality. This is surely humanity's darkest hour. The Imperium made official first contact with the Tau during the Damocles Gulf Crusade, also called the Damocles Crusade, which was the first military conflict fought between the Imperium of Man and the rapidly expanding Tau Empire in the Lithoid sector of the Ultima Segmentum in the galaxy's eastern fringes during the late 41st millennium. The conflict essentially ended in a stalemate, as the Imperium was forced to conclude its military offensive earlier to deal with the encroaching Tyranid threat, while the Tau sought to begin diplomatic negotiations with the Imperium to show humanity the benefits to be had by accepting the greater good. Members of the Tau water caste had established trade agreements with imperial worlds on the frontier of the Tau Empire, near the Damocles Gulf region of the Ultima Segmentum in the galactic east, and exchanges of goods and technology were common. Alarmed by the threat of alien contamination, the Administratum readied a suitable response, and almost a century later, the Damocles Crusade smashed into Tau space, destroying several outlying settlements and pushing deep into the Tau Empire. When the Imperial fleet reached the Tau-sept world of Daleth Prime, however, the Crusade ground to a bloody stalemate as the formidable numbers and high technology of the Tau and their crude allies thwarted every attempt to capture the world or its star system. Many months of terrible fighting ensued with nothing gained on either side. By the late 742nd year of the 41st millennium, the Crusade's commanders eventually agreed to requests from the water caste for peace talks. The negotiations were successful, and the Imperial fleet withdrew from Tau space unmolested, primarily due to the impending approach of the Tyranid Hive fleet behemoth. The time of ending earned its name in the 744th year of the 41st millennium, when Tagarath, the seer of Corinto, proclaims the approach of the end times. He prophesies a time of unprecedented upheaval, in which even the light of the Emperor is swallowed in darkness. Tagarath is swiftly executed by the Inquisition for heresy, and to keep his prophecies unknown by the wider imperial public, but the doomsayer's cry is picked up by other psychic sensitives on planets beyond count across the human-settled galaxy. In the 745th year of the 41st millennium, the Tyranids first enter the galaxy and the Tyrannic Wars begin. Hive fleet behemoth destroys the imperial star systems of Tyran, for which the Tyranids are named, and Thandros. Later that same year, Hive fleet behemoth descends upon the realm of Ultramar, the fief of the Ultramarines, laying waste to several worlds and badly damaging the Space Marines' greatest chapter. The bold deeds done during the Battle of Macragge are one of the most enduring of the many legends of the Ultramarines. The immediate threat presented by Hive fleet behemoth is ended under the guns of two entire Imperial Navy battle fleets. Still reeling from the terrible wounds, Imperial commanders across the Ultima Segmentum look to the borders with growing unease. The Bloodstar campaign unfolds in the 748th year of the 41st millennium, when the star Ares turns blood red. It heralds increased demonic activity in the Scaras sector. Before the brutal campaign ends, he claims entailed lives, including 3 chapter masters and the fleet admiral of Segmentum Obscurus. In the 750th year of the 41st millennium, the Great Exodus occurs. A strange swelling phenomenon in the Argos system is only a curiosity until the sudden appearance of 6 Eldar craft worlds. By the time the Imperial fleet arrives, both the swelling mass and the Eldar are gone, yet in their passing, all prime suns within 60 light-years are extinguished. The Imperial fleet and innumerable transports attempt to ferry the countless billions of Imperial citizens to neighboring star systems, in what is the largest exodus ever attempted by the Imperium. It is estimated that nearly 12% of the population and 32% of the heavy industry of the region are safely removed. The Ring of Dead Planets and Suns is now known as the Deadhenge, a salvage's paradise and refuge of pirates. Include: everything happens in 41st Millennium, so to not annoy you with repeating 41st Millennium every couple of seconds, from now I will read only the year of the event. End of include. The year 757 saw the first recorded incidence of the dead zombie plague erupting on the world of Hydromenorus. A quarantine is imposed by the Imperial Navy, trapping 23 billion uninfected people alongside a rising tide of the hungry, contagious and mindless undead children of Nurgle. In the 766th year, many Imperial watch stations and listening posts in the Catacomb and Riser systems are attacked by Eldar pirates under the command of Iriel. Without their early warning, eyes and ears, this leaves both star systems vulnerable for decades to come. In the 783rd year, Eldar from the Althway craft world destroy Mechanicus Explorator fleet above the dead world of Midrax, but not before several probes have been released. Space Marines from the Blood Angels Chapter were dispatched to investigate the loss of the fleet and instead become embroiled in a battle between the Eldar and the Necrons who had just recently awakened on Midrax. An uprising in the Kranda system in the 795th year of the 41st Millennium is harshly put down by the 23rd Cadian Regiment. Several of the Chaos cults involved in the rebellion, notably the followers of the Shining Deity, the Cult of Many Tentacles and the Red-Robed Brotherhood, had not been seen since the Fourth Quadrant Rebellion. Although both military and civilian losses are high, the Kranda rebellion's quick subjugation is vital. The Imperium could ill afford to lose the resource-rich Kranda system, which held planets strategically vital to the whole of the Segmentum Obscurus. Throughout the Segmentum Ultima, in the 797th year of the 41st Millennium, countless Orc invasions threatened to mass into a single colossal warg. The forces of the Imperium are stretched to their utmost to contain each individual war zone. Notable actions include Marneus Calgar, Chapter Master of the Ultramarines, holding the gate alone for a night and a day against the Greenskin hordes during the Siege of Zalathras, and the Second Company's utter devastation of War Boss Brug's planetary stronghold. In the 801st year, a brief flicker in the Astronomicon throws thousands of ships off course, dooming them to destruction in the warp. The incident indicates that the Emperor may be weakening. The lamentable campaign known as the Siege of Vrax occurs from 813th to the 830th year of the 41st Millennium. The apostate Cardinal Zafin leads the armory world of Vrax Prime into the service of the ruinous powers. As the forces of the Imperium arrive to quell the rebellion, they are immediately met in battle, followed by a rapid escalation of forces on both sides. The 17-year-long campaign ends in a full-scale demonic incursion and, finally, the intervention of the Ordo Malleus and the Grey Knights. By the end, Vrax is entirely laid waste, its entire population exterminated. In the 822nd year, the Chaos War Master Abaddon the Despoiler raids the Eldar maiden world of Ildanira, seeking a long-lost chaotic artifact. He is driven away by the forces of the Elitok craft world. Such an action is only minor compared to the many wars consuming the galaxy at this time, but its portents loom large in hindsight. By the 853rd year, the uprising against imperial rule on Kranda III, thought to have been successfully suppressed over 50 standard years previously, had once more grown strong. Mutants, psychers and all manner of outcasts had been nurtured in darkness and corruption by the whisper of cowled chaos cultists. Even as the surging rebellion takes over the planet's surface, Hive City by Hive City, the orbital sentinel stations and moon-based defense lasers are captured by Chaos Space Marines accompanied by loathsome creatures, neither man nor mutant but wholly demonic. 3 Space Marine chapters, led by the stoic Imperial Fists, secure resources, Imperial artifacts, and a few Adeptus Administratum officials before an Exterminatus is mercifully delivered. Some 42nd Imperial Guard regiments from Cranda 3 still exist, the only survivors of their lost and benighted world because they had been shipped to distant war zones before the rebellion began. In the 863rd, the St. Cuthlia massacre occurred when the Adamant Fury Titan Legion betrayed the Emperor and fell to chaos. The traitor Titan Legion turned its guns upon loyalist regiments of the St. Cillian Planetary Defense Forces before making good their escape off-world. The loss of a full Titan Legion sends ripples of concern through the Imperium, and great effort is exerted to find and destroy it, particularly by the Mechanicus and its Collegia Titanica. In the 876th year, chaos came to the world of Van Horn in the event later known as the Bloodtide to the Inquisition. The bloodthirsty Kiaganath, Lord of the Bloodtide, broke free of his bonds and unleashed a tide of gore that corrupted everything it touched. For 8 days and nights the orgies of blood continue, each fresh death luring yet more demons to the mortal world as the barrier between the Materium and the warp breaks down. Only when the Grey Knight's fourth brotherhood arrived was the bloodtide abated, and then only at great cost. Kiaganath is cast back into the warp. The psychic backlash also banishes the bloodtide and the demons it had drawn forth. In the 883rd year, the 423rd Cadian Regiment's spearhead, led by Knight Commander Pask, was the largest armoured assault undertaken by the Imperium since the Talon during the Horus Heresy. Over 8,000 Imperial tank companies and 35 super-heavy tank detachments were annihilated during the near-total destruction of the renegade Adamant Fury traitor Titan Legion upon the Planus steppes. In the 888th year, during the Crusade of Wrath, the Black Templars chapter inflicts heavy losses on the Word-Bearers Traitor Legion, reclaiming several star systems previously lost in the Maelstrom. In the 891st year, the worlds of Perseus suffer attacks from Eldar corsairs during the long midnight who swathe the targets in utter darkness before pillaging and slaughtering at will. The vicious raids only cease upon the arrival of the Praxian patrol. In the 897th, the fortress convent known as Sanctuary 101 is destroyed, with all the Sisters of Battle within, by the Necrons. No survivors or signs of the perpetrators are left behind. Some few savants in the Imperium begin to understand the vast threat that the awakening Necrons might become to mankind. In that same year, 897 of the 41st Millennium, a new Tyranid menace, code-named Hive Fleet Gorgon, is spotted by Imperial outposts, heading directly for the growing Tau Empire in the eastern fringe. No warnings are given to the Tau of what is to befall them. In the 901st year, the terrible civil conflict known as the Badab War begins when Lufgt Huron, the chapter master of the Astral Claws Space Marines, refuses to hand over his chapter's tithe of Gene C to the Administratum and instead announces his secession from the Imperium, declaring himself the tyrant of Badab. 12 standard years of intersystem war follow, wreaking havoc on shipping lanes in the Maelstrom zone and embroiling more than a dozen Space Marine chapters. With much loss, Badab Primaris finally falls to the Loyalist forces, but Lufgt Huron and some 200 of the Astral Claws escape to take refuge in the Maelstrom of the Ultima Segmentum. There they become Chaos Space Marines and change their name to the Red Corsairs. They become fearsome pirates and raiders of imperial commerce. Huron adopts the title of Blackheart and continues to recruit more Astartes renegades to join his growing chaotic empire. In the 907th year, Orkwag activity rises throughout all 5 segmentums of the Imperium, forcing the Novamarines, Raptors and Howling Griffins to be redeployed away from the Badab War to counter the growing Greenskin threat. In the 913th year, the disciples of the Thousand Sons Chaos sorcerer Ahriman sacked the Librarium on the world of Jolana. In the 920th year, Eldar pirates attacked the advance escort of a fleet of black ships as they exit warp space in the Thanos system. The pirates destroyed 3 frigates and captured the troopship Emperor's Faithful. The pirates quickly disappeared, taking with them a vast complement of Imperial Guard and Imperial Navy personnel. As a result, the fleet of black ships is left vulnerable and is picked off one by one in further raids. In the 925th year, the Necron world engine is revealed as the architect of the destruction of the Vidar sector. It is finally destroyed, thanks chiefly to the sacrifice of the entire Astral Knights chapter. In the 926th year, during the Vax'Orlan genocide, a Chaos Space Marine warband known as the Purge slaughtered over 14 billion Imperial citizens and claimed the planet Vax'Hall as their own. The Vax'Hall served as an astropath relay hub and as an Imperial fortress world, the buttress of the Heracles system. In the 937th year, Inquisitor Pranix leads 5 companies of Space Wolves and units of the 301st Cadian and the 14th Talon Imperial Guard regiments in an attempt to reclaim the 9 Hollow Worlds from the clutches of the Chaos Lord Huron Blackheart and his Red Corsairs warband. The Imperium's forces are stunned to see how quickly the Red Corsairs have expanded and how vast their renegade empire of pirates has grown. In the 941st year, the Second War for Armageddon began when the largest and most powerful orc in millennia, the warlord Gazkul Magarik Thraka, leads a vast warg that, after much rampaging, meets its match upon Armageddon, a hive world of vital strategic importance to the Imperium in the Segmentum Solar. The orcs are defeated only by the stubbornness of the defenders, the combined might of 3 Space Marines chapters and the legendary heroics of Commissar Yarok. Gazkul escapes and vows to return one day. In the 963rd year, the Imperium ran afoul of the Tau Empire when the Ultramarines clashed with a Tau expeditionary fleet for control of the cursed planet of Malbede. When the conflict awakened the Necrons whose tombs were hidden on Malbede, the Ultramarines joined the Tau in a temporary alliance to defeat the emerging Necrons. In the wake of the battle, Exterminatus is proclaimed on Malbede by the Ultramarines Chapter Master Marneus Calgar, but he generously allows the Tau to evacuate before the surface of the planet is destroyed. The planet's destruction sets off a brief flicker of unknown energy on dozens of planets throughout the galaxy. Many fear that more tomb worlds are awakening. Unfortunately, the Imperium of Man now finds itself facing 2 more alien enemies, the humanoid Tau, who seek to expand the growing interstellar empire to serve the greater good, and the Necrons who seek to re-establish the galaxy-wide empire of ages past. In the 969th year, the ancient starship Blade of Eternity is once again sighted, this time near the Kandu system. As it is approached, the ship is mysteriously replaced by the infamous Death Guard plague ship Terminus Est. The zombie plague sweeps across the system. Infected refugees carry the chaotic foulness far and wide across the Imperium. In the 973rd year, a violent warp storm troubles the dreams of men across the galaxy. For those more psychically aware, the storms prove catastrophic. Nightmares crack the barrier between real space and the warp, slaying many psychers and creating rifts between the immaterium and reality. Although brief, thousands of demonic incursions cause untold damage and many dark seeds of corruption are planted. In the 975th year, the bloodthirsty Skarbrand materializes on the Cadian fortress world of Lutorius Epsilon. His berserk rage infects all he surveys, and soon the fortifications are drenched in blood as the Imperial Guardsmen turn upon each other in crazed bloodlust. Lutorius has since been considered cursed and is currently classified as a quarantined forbidden world by the Inquisition. In the 976th, a massive orc invasion smashes into the western sector of Segmentum Ultima. Warg. Grax is denied taking the Forge World of Riser, but the surrounding sectors suffer great devastation. In the 989th year, Warg Snagrod rampages across the Loki sector, culminating in an assault on Rin's world that nearly wipes out the venerated Crimson Fists chapter of Space Marines when an unfortunate accident destroys the fortress monastery. Imperial forces retake the Agri-world in the 991st year of the 41st Millennium, and the Crimson Fists begin the long process of rebuilding the chapter back to full strength. In the 992nd year, Eldar forces attack Hadean holdings on the world of Auron, only to be utterly defeated through the inspired tactical genius of Ursarkar Ekreed. In the 993rd year, the Ultramarines crush a rebellion on the industrial world of Itcha IV, only to find themselves in the forefront of a desperate defense against the arrival of the Tyranid's Hive fleet Kraken. Elsewhere, the Eldar craft world Ayandan is simultaneously ravaged by other tendrils of the Kraken. Two Space Marine chapters, the Scythes of the Emperor and the Lamenters, are all but wiped out by the Hive fleet, and hundreds of Imperial worlds are lost to the ravenous Tyranids before the incursion is finally halted. Inclusion. Everything still is going on in 41st Millennium, but from now dates are more precise. You may be a little confused because in Warhammer 40,000 universe there are no days and months. Each year is divided into 1,000 equal parts. I will do separate audio book about Imperial calendar. End of inclusion. In the 138th part of the 997th year, humanity peers into the abyss when the twin tendrils of Hive Fleet Leviathan emerge from intergalactic space and strike at the underbelly of the Imperium from below the galactic plane, cutting a swathe of truly horrific destruction through Segmentum Tempestus. Ultima and Solar in what is sometimes called the Third Tyrannic War. It becomes clear that the two previous Tyranid incursions into the galaxy were only reconnaissance expeditions for the main Hive fleet. In the 221st part of the 997th year, the world of Pisina IV is invaded by orcs under the joint leadership of Garz Kulthraker and the Bad Moons clan war boss Nazdreg. Orcish teleportation technology is employed in a surprise attack, and only the Stout Defense Command by Master Belial of the Dark Angels chapter and the timely arrival of reinforcements ends the orc threat. Although the Imperial victory is great, several Imperial commanders, including Belial, feel that Garz Kulha has another trick up his sleeve. In the 509th part of the 997th year, elements from the Ultramarines and Mortifactors Space Marine chapters make a stand against one spur of Hive Fleet Leviathan on the world of Tarsis Ultra. The defenders defeat this tendril with the use of a genetically engineered biological plague, but the remainder of the enormous Hive fleet rampages on unaffected. In the 601st part of the 997th year, Garz Kulthraker comes face to face with his old human nemesis, Commissar Yarrick, on the battlefields of the world of Golgotha. Yarrick is captured by the orcs but ultimately released as Warlord Garz Kul is planning to invade Armageddon once more and wants to ensure a good fight. Greenskins flock to Garz Kul's Warg in even greater numbers. In the 977th part of the 997th year, the small but vibrant Tau Empire begins its third sphere expansion. The Tau forcibly capture half a dozen more Imperial worlds on the eastern fringe, and several more joined the Tau Empire willingly to serve the greater good. In the 757th part of the 998th year, Garz Kul finally returns to Armageddon for his long-awaited rematch in the Third War for Armageddon at the head of a new, even greater Orc Warg. Garz Kul has further perfected the teleportation technology that he experimented with on Pisina IV and begins the campaign with devastating victories over the Imperial defenders. Imperial commanders, having learned from their previous encounters with this wily orc warlord, commit massive numbers of troops and quickly send out the call for nearby Space Marine chapters and further reinforcements. Several months into what rapidly becomes a battle of attrition, Garzfall grows bored with the grinding stalemate and leaves his minions behind to finish the fight while he sets off to conquer the surrounding planets. He is pursued by Commissar Yarrick and the Black Templars, who swear an oath to finally bring the Greenskin to heel. In the 718th part of the 9990th year, Hive Fleet Leviathan invades the large Orc Empire based in the Octrius system. War between Tyranids and Greenskins rages on with no signs of stopping. Imperial Navy scout patrols keep a close eye on the conflict, for should a victor emerge, there are precious few forces of the Imperium on hand to counter whatever enemy should arise out of the sector-wide bloodbath. In the 884th part of the 9990th year, the Dark Angels 5th Company battles elements of the Crimson Slaughter Chaos Space Marine Warband for the control of the artifact known as the Hellfire Stone. The Nephilim sector trembles as the hated foes clash. In the 975th part of the 9990th year, the light of the Astronomicon grows noticeably dimmer, while the contact is lost with Ultima Macharia and is intermittent with Macragge and Cypera Mundi. Some Imperial savants theorize that this is because of delays and losses amongst the Black Ships, while others point to omens of impending doom and the weakening of the Emperor. In the 978th part of the 9990th year, Dark Eldar raiders crippled the massive Imperial Navy moorings at Bakkar, leaving many Imperial star systems vulnerable to attack. In the 980th part of the 9990th year, the Red Corsairs launch a major raid from out of the Maelstrom, bringing the Chagorus, Kalas and Sesek systems under siege. Rumors report Huron Blackheart has grown his group of renegades as large as the full Space Marine legions of ancient times. The Chaos Lord now wields military power unseen since the time of the heresy. In the 982nd part of the 9990th year, the Great Awakening occurs, when a ripple of psychic activity passes through the Imperium, awakening the dormant powers of countless latent psychers. The resulting backlash creates innumerable warp rifts and 1,000 worlds are lost, hopelessly embroiled in demonic incursions. In the 987th part of the 9990th year, the Necrons rise to strike the Cypera Segantus system, the first recorded Necron attacks within only 2,000 light-years of terror. In the 989th part of the 9990th year, the Ultramarines 3rd Company liberates the Lagan system from the Tau Empire during the conflict known as the War of the Rising Suns. Even while they do so, several key worlds of the neighboring Dolmak system capitulate without firing a shot at Tau ambassadors and join the Tau Empire. In the 990th part of the 9990th year, the devastation of the Octrius Belt occurs when Eldar from the Bealtan and the same handcraft worlds assault many worlds surrounding the Octrius system with the intent of denying crucial biological resources to Hive Fleet Leviathan. Many are Orc-held worlds, but quite a few were colonized by the humans of the Imperium. The loss of human life is substantial, as is the loss of tithes that the planets would have paid to the Imperium in its time of need. In the 992nd part of the 9990th year, the Night of 1,000 Rebellions occurs. Uprisings and discord strike countless planets across the Imperium. Unrest races like wildfire, consuming many outlying planets but also supposedly secure worlds like Enceladus, Darkhold, and Minisotira. Even the homeworld of the Lion's Defiant Space Marine Chapter is lost to anarchy caused by secret cults and frenetic agitators. Contact is lost between Terra and large swathes of the Segmentum Pacificus. In the 993rd part of the 9998 year, wave after wave of astropathic pleas for help flood at once from all across the galaxy, though there is only an unnatural silence from the segmentum pacificus. So powerful is the influx, so overbearing is the psychic current, that Adeptus Astra Telepathica suffers serious personnel losses amongst their astropaths. Whole choirs collapse at once, driven mad or slain outright, their minds bursting. Vast breakdowns in Imperial communications ensue, increasing both anarchy and panic as the endless psychic screams for help echo across time and space. In the 995th part of the 9998 year, Abaddon the Despoiler launches the 13th Black Crusade out of the Eye of Terror with the intent to seize the world of Cadia and the surrounding worlds of the Cadian Gate. It defends and allow the forces of chaos to assault the heart of the Imperium for the first time since the Horus Heresy. The forces of the Chaos Gods read like a roll call from epic battles of past ages. Always in the vanguard of the Black Legion, followed by the Death Guard, World Eaters, Alpha Legion, Thousand Sons, Night Lords and others from the annals of the Imperium's blackest days. Legions and renegade chapters of Space Marines long thought extinct renew their assaults on the realm of the hated Corpse Emperor. Before they run infected, plague-ridden chaos cultists, deranged mutants and traitorous scum in numbers too great to be counted. Behind them tower demon princes, demon hosts and other warp creatures eager for the slaughter to be found in the mortal realm. Astropaths everywhere cringe to open their minds to receive messages, for the Empyrean rings with mind-splitting peals, possibly the sound of the myriad ears ripping in the barrier between the materium and the warp, or perhaps it is simply the laughter of the dark gods. The Imperium is forced to mobilize the largest military force in its history since the heresy to meet the massive chaos assault. The valor of the Imperial defenders is ultimately rewarded. Though the forces of chaos manage to secure a foothold on the surface of Cadia, the Imperial Navy defeats the Chaos War fleets in orbit of the Fortress World and traps the Chaos armies on the world below. As long as the Imperium can maintain its orbital superiority, a stalemate will be maintained. Astropaths everywhere cringe to open their minds to receive messages, for the warp rings with mind-splitting peals, possibly the sound of the myriad ears ripping in the barrier between the material world and the warp, or perhaps it is the laughter of dark gods. Defending that stalemate grows more difficult with every passing month as the Tyranids of Hive Fleet Leviathan march ever closer to Terra, drawn by the light and power of the Astronomicon in the warp, inevitably towards the heart of the Imperium. The heroism of the Space Marines and the Inquisition manages to slow down the progression of the massive Hive Fleet, but its ultimate objective is never in doubt. Finally, even as multiple calamities loom over the Imperium, the Adeptus Mechanicus learned a terrifying secret in the 986th part of the 999th year of the 41st millennium. The mechanisms of the Golden Throne have begun to fail and they no longer possess the knowledge required to repair that ancient piece of technology. Unless something can be done, the God Emperor will die and then humanity will face the drawing darkness alone. The Tyrannic Wars, the 745th year to the 999th year of the 41st millennium. The Tyrannic Wars are the collective conflicts ignited by the Tyranid race's sudden incursion into the Milky Way galaxy. Hive Fleet Behemoth, the 745th year of the 41st millennium. The first recorded encounter with the Tyranids occurred in the eastern fringe of the galaxy and was documented in reports from the planet Tyran. An Adeptus Mechanicus Explorator station at Tyran identified a collection of worlds in the area that had been stripped bare of the biomass and atmosphere. The station was subsequently attacked and consumed. A year later, an Imperial Inquisitor named Cryptmin, who received information regarding the attack, arrived on Tyran to investigate. After searching the planet, he chanced upon a data codex hidden deep within Tyranid's crust which contained information about the invaders. The information collected by the explorators on Tyranid allowed Cryptmen to identify the pattern of attacks and predict the course of the Hive fleet. However, these predictions came too late. Several more civilizations were wiped out, largely because astropaths could not send psychic requests for help because of a phenomenon known as the shadow of the warp. Somehow, the presence of a Tyranid Hive fleet near a planet stops psychic communication and transportation through the warp, which is the primary method of interstellar communication and transport used by the Imperium's astropaths and warp-drive-equipped starships. The Tyranid force, dubbed Hive Fleet Behemoth in a rare moment of literary imagination at Imperial command, cut its way through the Ultramar sector, the realm of the Ultramarines Chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. Undeterred by the Space Marines Chapter fleet, Behemoth reduced Prandium, the garden world once known as the Duel of Ultramar, to bare rock. Eventually, Chapter Master Marneus Calgar mustered his entire force for a last-ditch defense of the Ultramarines' homeworld of Macragge. Here, during the Battle of Macragge, the Hive fleet was completely destroyed. However, the Ultramarines suffered heavy losses, losing their entire veteran First Company in a last stand at the northern polar fortress. Hive Fleet Kraken, the 993rd year of the 41st Millennium. The second wave of Tyranids to fight against the Imperium was known as Hive Fleet Kraken. Instead of throwing one mass of troops against the human armies, this swarm split into countless smaller fleets, each one enveloping whole systems before reinforcements could arrive. Kraken was finally brought to battle on a grand scale at Itcha 4, an Imperial Hive world. The brunt of this attack was borne by the scythes of the Emperor and Lamentor's chapters of the Space Marines and the Eldar craft worlder Yandan, all of whom suffered very heavy losses. According to Lieutenant Cage of the Last Chance's Penal Regiment, the Imperial Guard lost over 1 million men at Itcha 4, though this may serve simply to illustrate in a very broad sense the scale of the combat against the Kraken. As numerically speaking, 1 million soldiers is not a great burden for an entire Hive world to expend in its defense, since it is home to billions of people. The Kraken was not fully destroyed though, and split into several splinter fleets which have continued to represent major threats to the Imperium as they spread and grow like a Xenos cancer upon the galaxy. There was little respite for the Imperium after Kraken's near destruction as a new Hive fleet emerged soon after. Hive Fleet Leviathan, the 997th year of the 41st Millennium. The third wave of Tyranid attacks, Hive Fleet Leviathan, appeared from below the galactic plane and attacked from 2 points, cutting off large portions of the galaxy from Imperial reinforcements. In order to buy some time, the Imperium, under the command of Inquisitor Cryptman, attempted to redirect the attacks of this fleet towards the Orc-held worlds of the Octavius system. While the plan was a success, the Tyranids have since been steadily working their way through Orc space, suffering massive losses, assimilating everything that stands before them. The Imperium has bought itself a century at least to prepare for the next attack, but there is no telling how the Tyranids may evolve thanks to the newly harvested Orcoid DNA. Hive Fleet Leviathan also attacked around the same time as Hive Fleet Kraken, making both fleets difficult to deal with for the Imperium, as the elements of one or the other would provoke some sort of uprising provoked by gene-stealer cults or invade Imperial worlds outright in the Great Devourer's eternal quest for more biomass to enhance its Hive fleet's reproduction rates. To date, Behemoth is the only Tyranid Hive fleet that did not divide its mass into different tentacles that attacked Imperial space from several different locations at once, and it suffered the consequences of being less strategically minded than its successors. 13th Black Crusade, the 995th part of the 999th year of the 41st Millennium. The 13th Black Crusade is the most recent and the greatest of the incursions launched against the Imperium by Abaddon the Despoiler, and was the greatest conflict fought between the forces of Chaos and the Imperium of Man since the Horus Heresy. Under the command of the War Master Abaddon, the traitor legions pour out from the Eye of Terror, emptying 100 demon worlds and bursting into real space in hitherto unforeseen numbers. The armies of Chaos start at the Cadian Gate in a great push towards Terra. The goal of the Chaos forces was the fortress world of Cadia, the capture of which was the ultimate goal of the forces of Chaos, since it would allow them to create a forward base for a new drive upon Terra to topple the Emperor from the Golden Throne and end their long war. Rumors persist that the demon Primarchs ride at the head of the armies of the traitor legions, return to the mortal realm to usher in the end times. Imperial forces counterattack, but there is no end to the forces of the Dark Gods. Despite the best efforts of the Imperium's fierce defenders, including the Black Templars, Imperial Fists, Dark Angels and Space Wolves, Cadia, lines of the defenses surrounding the Cadian Gate, eventually falls. And on Terra, the Adeptus Mechanicus secretly reports to the High Lords of Terra in the same year that the mechanisms of the Golden Throne are failing and they do not possess the knowledge required to repair its ancient technology. War in the Eastern Fringe, 999th year of the 41st Millennium. During the 13th Black Crusade, the Tau used the redeployment of Imperial forces to the Segmentum Obscurus to initiate the Third Sphere expansion of their empire in the eastern fringe of the galaxy, unleashing what became known in Imperial records as the Zeist Campaign, the Prefectia Campaign and the Second Agrellan Campaign. The war led to massive casualties amongst the Imperium and the Xenos forces before the Tau expansion briefly came to an end following the Exterminatus unleashed upon the Sept of Mughalath Bay following the Second Agrellan Campaign. Guilliman Awags, approximately 999th year of the 41st Millennium. Strange events, the appearance of the ancient Archmagos Belisarius call and a cryptic alliance with a mysterious Eldar faction known as the Inari conspire to awaken the Ultramarines Primarch Robert Guilliman from his millennia-long slumber in a stasis chamber. During the Ultramar campaign of the 13th Black Crusade, the Primarch is immediately embroiled in battle as a chaos assault by the Black Legion as Abaddon attempts to prevent his return. Once Ultramar is safe from the assaults of Chaos, Guilliman embarks on the Terran Crusade to meet with his father the Emperor for the first time in 1000 standard years. What transpires at that meeting within the Imperial Palace on Terra is unknown, but at its conclusion, Guilliman is restored to his position as the Lord Commander of the Imperium, the first among equals on the Senatorum Imperialis. The Age of the Dark Imperium, approximately 999th year of the 41st Millennium till present. Reality tears itself apart from the Hadex anomaly at the core of the Jericho Reach in the eastern fringe, to the furthest star system of the Segmentum Obscurus. For that hole come warp storms not seen since the Age of Strife, cutting off the galactic north from Terra. The initial period, known as the Noctis Aeterna, or the Blackness, is terrible indeed. For a time, all warp travel is impossible and the far-spread planets of the Imperium are isolated, with no travel or astropathic communication between them. Worlds in their hundreds fall before the ensuing chaos onslaught. The pulsing Great Rift or Cicatrix Maledictum spreads like an impenetrable curtain, robbing entire systems of the holy light of Terra. The Battle of Lion's Gate. As the first warp storms broke over Holy Terra, its pollution-filled skies turned a roiling crimson. Khorne, heedless of the plans of his brothers and hungry to prove his superiority, sent forth 88 cohorts of his demon legions to assault the Imperial Palace. The Blood God wanted the glory of tearing down the Golden Throne for himself, and so the skies of Terra congealed into blood clouds that deployed the Red Host directly before the Lion's Gate. The gun batteries of the Imperial Palace are second to none, yet they alone could not halt this red tide. Led by Robert Guilliman, the newly reappointed Lord Commander of the Imperium, the Primaris Space Marines, Adeptus Custodes and Sisters of Silence fought side by side. Although the rash Chaos assault was turned back and broken long before it could reach the Eternity Gate to the Inner Palace, the High Lords of Terror were shaken at the boldness of the foe. Without the beam of the Astronomicon, their arcane machinery and protective devices were not enough to halt the fell powers from materializing even on Holy Terror. Khorne, upon receiving the returning forms of his slain, grew so apoplectic in his rage that his fortress in the realm of chaos trembled. So great was the heat from his outburst that the essences of the 8 bloodthirsters that led the failed attack were wholly obliterated. Indomitus, approximately 999th year of the 41st millennium to approximately the 111th year of the 42nd millennium. After his defense of Holy Terror, Robert Guilliman gathered a new armada that he named the Indomitus Crusade, the largest concentration of Imperial military forces seen since the original Great Crusade over 10,000 standard years before. Along with elements of the Adeptus Custodes, a small contingent of the Silent Sisterhood, and a vast war host of Primaris Space Marines from many newly founded chapters and the legions of the Unnumbered Sons, the Primarch set a winding course. Strike forces from over a dozen pre-existing chapters of Space Marines, led by the Imperial Fists, joined the fleet. Thus began many new legends as Guilliman traveled 8 beleaguered planets, breaking sieges and sweeping away Chaos and Xenos invaders alike to bring hope back to the desperate defenders. It was not long before word began to spread, as all those planets that could still receive astropathic messages hailed the return of a hero out of myth. Once more, one of the demigods of the past fought for the Imperium of man. The Indomitus Crusade would reach its end over a century into the 42nd millennium at the Battle of Raukos. Afterwards, Guilliman would turn his attention to helping his realm of Ultramar defeat the forces of the Death Guard Traitor Legion and the Servants of Nurgle in the Plague Wars. The devastation of Baal, approximately 999th year of the 41st millennium to unknown date in the 42nd millennium. After sacrificing the shield worlds of the Cryptus system to fend off the Xenos' earliest advance on the Baal system, the planet of Baal itself came under intense attack by Hive fleet Leviathan. The Tyranid Hive fleet was of such mass, even after its considerable losses, that it blotted the stars from the skies. Lord Commander Dante bolstered the formidable defenses of the Blood Angels Chapter homeworld and its moons like never before. Not one to await attack, he also sent forth scores of preemptive strike forces to delay, mislead, and whittle down the living armada. Hundreds of splinter fleets were thus defeated. Dante's call, beseeching the Blood Angels' successors to send immediate aid to the parent chapter, did not go unheeded. The Flesh Tearers were the first to arrive, and ultimately all the successor chapters save the Lamenters answered the call. Even the Knights of Blood, who had been declared excommunicate traitorous by the High Lords of Terror, arrived to bolster the defenses. It was still not enough. Learning at an exponential rate, Hive fleet Leviathan could not be thwarted by the same strategy twice. Advancing steadily, the superior numbers cleared the entire surrounding sector of life before the Xenos made planetfall upon Baal and her twin moons. The first 19 waves, each larger than the last, were driven off at a great loss to the Blood Angels and the successor allies. 5 chapter masters fell in that bitter fighting, 3 in the battle at the Dome of Angels alone. The Tyranids began the process of absorbing all biomass from Baal and its moons, absorbing even the radiation-poisoned deserts of Baal Secundus. With the defenses in ruin and Baal's moons stripped and broken, the remaining Space Marines retreated back to the rubble of the Blood Angels' sprawling fortress monastery. They prepared for the last stand as the next wave swept downwards. Doom, it seemed, had, at last, come to the sons of Sanguinius. It was then that the Great Rift cracked open the galaxy in the wake of the fall of Cadia to the 13th Black Crusade, and the withered Baal system was blasted by the etheric storms. Although no further attack waves came from the Leviathan Hive fleet, not a single Imperial defender remained alive upon the last moon, Baal Prime. On Baal itself, there were already enough Tyranids to destroy the Imperial troops many times over. Even with no chance of victory, Commander Dante led his troops, each fighting retreat seemingly more hopeless than the last. The Empyrean energy spilling from the Great Rift caused time itself to pass strangely on Baal. The combatants may have faced each other for mere solar days, or Terran years may have passed in the rest of the galaxy. As the final perimeter was broken, the stars reappeared. Looking skywards, the Tyranids on the surface of Baal sought contact with their Hive fleet, but it was gone, replaced by a newly arrived Imperial fleet. Like an angel of vengeance came Robert Guilliman and his Indomitus crusade. After many more battles, Baal was finally cleared of the Xenos threat. A great rebuilding of both world and chapter was undertaken, for the Blood Angels and the successes were sorely needed elsewhere in the beleaguered Imperium. What became of the Leviathan is a mystery, although a clue was found upon the now barren moon of Baal Prime. Xenos skulls were piled impossibly high in the much-reviled, eight-pillared symbol of one of the Blood Angels' most terrible and ancient nemesis, the bloodthirster, Carbander and his army of Cornate demons. Plague Wars, approximately the 111th year of the 42nd millennium. The Plague Wars were an attempt by the demonic and heretic Astartes forces of the Chaos God Nurgle, including the demon Primarch Mortarion and his Death Guard traitor Legion, to conquer the realm of Ultramar and add it to the Plague God's growing realm in real space. The Plague Wars began at some point after the birth of the Great Rift and the onset of the Noctis Aeterna and ended in approximately the 111th year of the 42nd millennium after the Primarch Robert Guilliman successfully ended his Indomitus crusade and brought Imperial reinforcements to defend Ultramar. To the galactic north of Ultramar, the followers of the Chaos God Nurgle first established dominion in the Scourged Stars soon after the success of the 13th Black Crusade in precipitating the fall of Cadia. For this hive of corruption, armies of Nurgle demons poured forth, accompanied by the traitorous Death Guard Legion along with renegades and chaos cultists beyond count. 3 loathsome spearheads pushed into Ultramar, attacking along 100 fronts and bringing with them unnatural pestilence. The defenders of Ultramar, Astartes and mortal alike, fought bravely but quickly lost ground. Ultramarine Primaris Space Marines of the Ultima founding arrived not long after the successful completion of the resurrected Primarch Robert Guilliman's Terran crusade from Terra aboard Fleet Avenger to reinforce the Brethren. But even these transhuman reinforcements could only slow the attackers' progress. Over 100 standard years after the start of the Indomitus Crusade, the Imperial defenders all across Ultramar were depleted in dozens of ground campaigns, while the Plague Fleet systematically destroyed the realm's Ultramar defense fleet and star fortresses. Guilliman returned from the Indomitus Crusade after over a standard century of campaigning to stabilize the Imperium, and his deft and defensive maneuvers bought time to launch what became known as the Spear of Espandor counterattack. The combined plague armies were eventually fought to a standstill amongst the ruins of IX before the Death Guard demon Primarch Mortarion escaped with his forces back to the Scourged Stars under cover of a virus bomb attack. Both because of his brother's staunch defense and because Nurgle's realm in real space had come under assault by the forces of the Blood God Khorne. In a brief respite from the work of safeguarding the Emperor's realm after Mortarion's defeat, Guilliman ordered the rebuilding and decontamination of Ultramar, as well as the establishing of new procedures for creating further Ultramarines. It was not long before new Imperial crusades called the Lord Commander of the Imperium away from Ultramar and back out into the Dark Galaxy. The Ultramarines then began the work of preparing their vengeance against the servants of the Dark Gods. The end.